With all the talk that's going around about autonomous cars and electric cars and maybe not owning a car at all, this car seems like it comes from another era. It's an Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio Verde, and it's a rear-wheel drive car with a 6-speed manual gearbox that sends out 510 horsepower from a V6 that comes from none other than Ferrari. It's a perfect car. It's a car made for purists, for those people who only want a car that they can engage in, that they can take to a track day, that they can really drive like it's some kind of old-fashioned 80s or 90s or 70s car. This car is an internet forum's dream come true, and it's actually also beautiful to look at. And yet, it doesn't sell nearly as much as a BMW M3 or any of its rivals for that matter. What I'm going to talk about in this video is just how fantastic this car is, and also I'm going to talk about its drawbacks. But what I really want to analyze in this video is the mindset of the person who is willing to buy this car, but ultimately decides not to.
So what exactly is this car? The Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio Verde is the sporty version of the Giulia, rivaling cars such as the Mercedes-Benz C63 AMG, BMW M3 or Audi RS4. The name is a mouthful, so feel free to call it simply Giulia QV, or as they call it among the die-hard fans, the Tipo 952. When we look at Alfa Romeo's history, we find this is a very special car for various reasons. For starters, it's the very first rear-wheel drive car the Italian brand has made since the 75 went out of production over 30 years ago. But even considering that car, this is the first time Alfa Romeo has made a proper sports sedan rival ever since I can remember really, as even the top versions of the previously mentioned 75 were not really AMG or M car rivals, at least when it came to specifications. Neither was the GTA trim of the Alfa Romeo 156, as rare as they were. The Giulia itself was a massive turning point for Alfa, which had, by the mid-90s, become a slightly more premium version of Fiat as could be seen later with cars such as the Mito or Giulietta. When the Giulia started production in 2015, it became the emblem of Alfa Romeo's move-up market and of its reintroduction to the United States, the country it had left in 1995. The expectations were high in terms of how good this car could be, but they were never really that high in terms of sales expectations. People at Fiat Chrysler, the conglomerate which at the time owned Alfa Romeo, knew this wouldn't outsell the Germans, but expected sales to at least be decent, especially since journalists' first reviews of the car were really good. Still, the car managed to disappoint. In 2014, Alfa Romeo promised that thanks to the then upcoming Giulia and Stelvio, the brand would sell 400,000 cars by 2018. It ended up selling just over 100,000 units. But seriously, why? As you'll find out in this review, like most other journalists, I actually love the car. I'm starting to think the issue may lie with the buyers, not so much with the product. Returning to the Giulia Quadrifoglio, let me tell you a little about what's under the hood.
This car is powered by a 2.9-liter V6 that sends out 510 horsepower to the rear wheels. Now the story says that this engine is essentially a V8 Ferrari engine with the last two cylinders chopped off.
I decided to look that up as I've become very skeptical of claims about cars that supposedly share the same engines over time. Most of the time, these claims seem to be only half-truths. I can't count how many times the owners of 5th generation Jettas with a 2.5 inline 5 engines have told me that they actually had half a Lamborghini engine under the hood. But this time, the claim is true, mostly. The Giulia QV has an engine internally denominated 690T, which is a derivative from the Ferrari Maserati F154 engines. So yes, it is absolutely true that it was designed by Ferrari, although it is also true no Ferrari carries this exact engine in the same V6 biturbo form. However, with 2 extra cylinders and some other minor changes, it becomes the same engine as the Ferrari Portofino, California T, or Ferrari Roma. With that information, it is logical that it sounds like this.
By the way, if you've reached this point in the video, would you mind subscribing? This is a new channel for me, and getting more subscribers helps a lot with growth and with getting YouTube to further recommend my videos. Thank you very much.
You'd think getting a Ferrari engined car would mean absurdly expensive maintenance, but that is not what I have seen with the Giulia QV. I mean, it's not cheap, but it's absolutely on par with rivals such as the BMW M3. Case in point, the brake discs and pads cost about the same as in the German car. But let's not get distracted by nuances such as the cost of running a car. Let's go straight to the driving experience.
And what's the driving experience like in this Giulia Quadrifoglio Verde? Let's find out. So we're starting driving now in neutral mode. Now there are, remember, 4 modes. We've got all-weather, which is the most docile mode. It's there for when, you know, it's snowing or there's size or it's raining a lot. You've got neutral, which is just normal driving. You've got dynamic, which opens up the exhaust valves and makes the throttle response a little bit better. And you've got race, which disconnects every single driver's aid. You've got no traction control, no stability control, and it's really the mode that you select when you're either on a racetrack or you really want to get into trouble. I'm really fortunate to be able to test this car in this road because it's the perfect road to test an Alfa Romeo Giulia with all these twisty roads. And it's actually funny because we've just left the racetrack. This car was on the racetrack almost all day. Just hearing the exhaust of this car already knows that you're driving a real driver's car. Now I'm gonna do a small acceleration test so that you can see how this car accelerates. This is a perfect car. As the time passes and I drive more and more cars, I end up realizing something. If there's one group of people who really know how to transmit something to you when you're driving a car, it's the Italians, without a single doubt. It's something that even as an owner of a German car, and having owned several German cars in the past, I've got to admit, I've never driven a German car that can transmit the same than even very mediocre Italian cars. I drove a 911 Turbo S for over 200 kilometers last week, and it wasn't even the same thing. So not even Porsche, and I've driven several Porsches over the years.
The easiest way to tell apart a Giulia Quadrifoglio Verde from a standard Giulia is by the 4-leaf clover on the side of the car. However, I've seen many normal Giulias with that emblem added on, just like a BMW owner adds M badges everywhere. So if you're still unsure, another telltale sign is the quad exhausts in the back. This car has a carbon package which includes a carbon fiber spoiler and lip, but most interesting of all, these beautiful front bucket seats. Aside from that, the interior might be the most disappointing aspect of this car. It's not particularly well equipped in terms of luxury, although that's not that unusual in sports car, but neither does it have a very technological advanced interior. That's part of the philosophy of the Giulia QV though. It's a driver's car. The main thing is a 6-speed manual gearbox, the drive selection lever, and the incredible way the exhaust sounds. If you're looking for touchscreens and a digital gauge cluster, this is not the car for you. This is raw, it's pure, it's old-fashioned. And yet, most people are not looking for that. Only people who know understand what a Giulia Quadrifoglio is. Even Volvo is more prestigious to the average person than Alfa Romeo. If sales figures tell us anything, it's that people are looking for whatever looks cooler or has a badge that allows you to flex. What gizmos does it have that could impress the person in the passenger seat? It doesn't have drift mode, it doesn't have a burnout mode. That's all meant to be done with your feet in this car, and that is not appealing to 400,000 people a year, as Alfa Romeo intended, but rather to a quarter of this. In the end, for as much as we talk about wanting these sorts of cars, we don't end up buying them. It's the same thing that happened on another level to the Kia Stinger. We petrolheads are constantly complaining that brands don't make enough quote-unquote driver's cars, but when they do, we don't buy them and make lame excuses for why we don't. Petrolheads, put your money where your mouth is. Get a Giulia. If the emblem is not good enough for you, just stick a BMW badge over the front.
There are two things that I can conclude from having driven this car, and neither is particularly good. Either we petrolheads are a very small but very vocal minority, and we're constantly screaming in internet forums about how cars have become so much less engaging, but really the vast majority of people doesn't care. Or perhaps we find that most petrolheads are not interested in manual, rear-wheel drive, powerful, good-sounding cars. Perhaps most people are just interested in something that goes fast, and something that can be eventually driven to work, or that posts good times in the Nürburgring, and maybe perhaps not that interested in the feelings or sensations that a car transmits. But if you are in that small group that still values enjoyment and pure driving thrill over certain numbers or certain figures, then may I ask you to please go buy a Giulia? If you've got the money to get a Quadrifoglio, then you should go do it. I'm very sure you won't regret it, even if it is only to help an endangered species survive. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more content on this channel. See you next time.